So welcome to Kevin's European Garage, and this is my 2013 Porsche Cayenne. It's the V6 model over here. And unfortunately, recently, it started doing something that I am not very happy about, and you can see right now what it's doing. As you can see from that clip over there, it's burning some oil. And on startup, it's got a nice little cloud smoke. Some days it's worse than others, but pretty much on every startup, you get a little something come out of the tailpipe. But that's not really the big problem. The real problem is that I go through about a quart of oil every 1,000 to 1,500 miles. So yeah, so I don't think that's really too acceptable. So I'm putting in a lot of oil on this thing. So it's pretty much about 4 quarts every 5,000 miles, every oil change. Basically, do half an oil change during an oil change. So I started looking into what can I possibly do to fix this. I know I'm not leaking anything because when I look underneath my car, it is bone dry. It's got 121,000 miles on it, and it is bone dry, which is kind of amazing. But yeah, I mean, there's not a leak on there, so I know I'm definitely not leaking anything. So there's only one place it's coming from, and it's coming from the tailpipe. And I know it's pretty much not the rings because when driving, when the thing's warmed up, you can pretty much romp on the gas as much as you want. You can sit there at idle, hit the gas over and over again, and nothing comes out of the tailpipe. It's clear. But you let it sit for a little while, especially on startup, you get a little puff of smoke, and that's usually from valve seals. So there's a couple products out there that supposedly will help with valve seals. Won't help with rings, but they'll help with valve seals. And the one that I'm going to try Liquid Moly. This is not a paid thing or anything like that. I bought this on my own. And so what I just did right now is I just changed the oil. Normally I've been using Mobil 1. I was thinking about changing to a different oil while I'm doing this. But that would kind of skew the results because what if, changing the oil, going from Mobil 1 to another oil, what if that possibly fixed some of the smoking? So I didn't really want to do that. So I wanted to find out if this stuff actually works or not. So this car takes approximately 7 quarts of oil. So I put 6.5 quarts in, and then I'm going to use 1.5 bottles of this. So it brings me up to approximately 7 quarts of oil. And I have a long trip I'm going to be doing this weekend. So I think it's round trip. It's about 800 miles. So this stuff, it says it takes anywhere from like 300 to 600 miles for it to start taking effect. So I should know after this weekend if this stuff is actually if it's actually working or not. So hopefully I will have an answer within the next couple of days. I won't have to wait very long to find out. And so right now I'm going to put in this stuff. And I've watched a few videos on this, and some people have said it's actually worked. Some people have said it's done nothing. I guess it all depends on, where you are burning the oil from. And they also say that this thing is supposed to quiet down your engine a little bit if you're making a little bit of noise. I guess we'll see. I mean, this thing is relatively quiet, I guess. I haven't noticed any additional noises over the years. But, I mean, I've owned this car for 6.5 years now. I bought it with 40,000 miles on it. I pretty much changed the oil every 5,000 miles, used Mobil 1 since 40,000 miles when I bought it. I know what it's been like since I've owned the car, but I can't say what they've done in the first 40,000 miles. So if they were horrible about changing their oil, that could be the reason why that over time I'm having issues with the valve seals. So supposedly this stuff is going to swell the valve seals, swell out the plastic, and make it so that it should stop having the oil leak by the valves after sitting for a while. And I guess if you have some bad seals, it should help with swelling the seals and having less of a leak, less of oil leaks coming from, like say, the front crank seal or the rear seal or some cam seals or something like that. So we'll see what this thing does. Like I said, I've got no leaks in this car, so it's not like I'm losing oil that way. All right, so I got it in here. So now what I got to do is just go and drive the car. And I got my 600-mile trip this weekend, or actually 800-mile trip this weekend. And we'll see what happens after that. So I just got back from my trip where I just put on about little over 1,000 miles. And according to the oil level in the dash of the car, it says that I consumed pretty much nothing. It didn't go down. It's still saying that I'm full. And the last time I did a trip on this, which is like only a few days before, I did 400 miles round trip, and then a few days before that, I did another 400-mile round trip. I was dropping my kids off at a camp, and I had to put in probably about a quart of oil between those two trips. And this time, round trip, 1,000 miles over a weekend, nothing. It didn't go down at all. Not a thing. But if you can see in this video over here, startup made no difference. I still have a puff of smoke that comes out the exhaust. So it made zero difference on startup, but there seems to be zero consumption now while driving. Like, I don't know. So I'm going to drive around a little bit longer, and I'm going to see what happens, because it's, if this is really true, where it pretty much is taking care of all my consumption while driving. But if I have a little puff on, on startup, I can deal with a little puff on startup. I mean, that's not that big of a deal. But it would be pretty huge to not have to put in a quart of oil every 1,000 miles or so. So far, I mean, if this is really true and it holds true, I'm pretty impressed with what this did. It's not 100% better because they still have that puff, but hey, if I don't have to put a quart in every 1,000 miles or every 1,500 miles, I mean, that's good by me. So I just put an additional 100 or so miles on the car, and there pretty much hasn't been any change. The level on the dash hasn't gone down. It hasn't changed at all. And I do still get a little bit of a puff of smoke when I start up the car after it's been sitting for a while. But, if that's all I have left, then that's not really a big deal. I mean, the fact is that, so it is still consuming a little bit of oil, especially on startup like that. But that's not really that big of a deal. I mean, the fact is that by now I would have normally gone through at least a quart of oil, if not a little bit more, and I haven't. It hasn't shown any drop on the dash at all. So, I mean, eventually it probably will. I mean, only time will tell. But how long it will take for it to actually go down a quart, I guess I'll have to see over the next couple thousand miles to see how much more I go through. But for this first initial 1,000 plus miles, 1,100 miles, it's been wonderful. It's definitely been, so far, a good product. So far it's it's looking like it's might actually save this engine. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and keep an eye out. I'll have more videos coming out soon. All right, thanks a lot.